The Galactic Concordance Council had ruled the stars for longer than humanity had known fire. 17 civilizations, each older and more powerful than the last, sat in judgment over the younger species of the galaxy. They controlled the hyperspace lanes, dictated trade, and demanded tribute from those too weak to resist. For decades, Earth had been nothing more than a footnote in their records, a latecomer, barely spacefaring, barely civilized. But that was about to change. Aboard the orbital chamber above Xylos Prime, the air hummed with quiet tension. The chamber was vast, shaped like a hollowed-out asteroid, its walls lined with glowing panels that shifted color with the mood of the assembly. Delegates from across the galaxy floated in their assigned sectors, some in pressurized suits, others suspended in nutrient tanks, a few simply standing on magnetic boots. All eyes turned toward the small human delegation as they entered through the western archway. Leading them was Captain Daniel Hayes. He was tall but not imposing, with short brown hair and calm gray eyes that had seen both war and peace. Beside him walked Maya Brooks, a linguist with sharp features and a mind that could untangle alien syntax in minutes. Behind them stood Leo Grant, lean and watchful, his fingers never far from the datapad strapped to his wrist. They wore simple Navy uniforms, unadorned except for the silver Earth emblem on their shoulders. Their ship, the Odyssey, waited in the docking bay below, a modest cruiser barely the size of a shuttle compared to the warships parked nearby. The summons had come without warning 3 days earlier. The Council rarely spoke directly to Earth. When they did, it was usually to issue a warning or demand compliance with some obscure regulation. This time the message was different. It carried the seal of the High Arbiter himself. Now standing in the center of the chamber, Daniel felt the weight of every gaze upon him. He knew what this was about. Rumors had been spreading for months. Humanity's rapid expansion into the Orion Arm had unsettled the old powers. Their victory over the Krell Swarm, a nomadic fleet of raiders that had terrorized the outer systems for generations, had shocked everyone. Humans had not just repelled the Krell, they had dismantled their entire armada in a single campaign, using tactics no one had seen before: coordinated drone swarms, predictive AI targeting, and something called adaptive resonance shielding that bent energy weapons like light through water. The Council could no longer pretend Earth was harmless. At the far end of the chamber, atop a raised dais of polished obsidian, sat High Arbiter Cale Vorn. He was a member of the Sulari, a reptilian species known for their patience and precision. His scales shimmered in shades of deep violet and silver, and his eyes, large, lidless, and black as void, fixed on the humans without blinking. When he spoke, his voice came through the universal translator as a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in the bones. "Representatives of Sol 3, he began. "You stand before the Galactic Concordance not as equals, but as petitioners. Your species has grown too quickly. You wield technologies you do not fully understand. You have drawn blood from enemies we have long contained. This cannot continue unchecked." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Vrothi delegates twitched their antennae. The Xanthari, crystalline beings who communicated through harmonic resonance, emitted a soft chime of agreement. Cale Vorn continued. "To ensure stability, and to acknowledge your place within the galactic order, the Council demands tribute. You will surrender 10% of your annual mineral output from all colonies. You will provide 5,000 human volunteers for labor assignments in the Helix Belt, and you will transfer all research and schematics related to your quantum fusion reactors to the Concordance Science Directorate." The terms were harsh. The mineral demand alone would cripple Earth's infrastructure projects. The volunteers would likely never return. Everyone knew the Helix Belt was a network of prison mines disguised as work colonies. And the quantum fusion tech? That was the heart of humanity's clean energy revolution. Without it, Earth would slide back into scarcity and pollution. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Leo's jaw tightened. But Daniel remained still. He had expected this. Maybe not the exact numbers, but the intent was clear. The Council wanted to clip humanity's wings before they could truly fly. Silence stretched. Every species in the chamber waited. They expected negotiation. They expected fear. They expected humans to bow, as so many young races had before them. Instead, Daniel stepped forward. He activated the small comm unit on his collar. The universal translator flickered to life, syncing with the chamber's network. He looked straight at Cale Vorn, not with anger, but with quiet resolve, and then he spoke one word. No. The word was simple, clear, final. It echoed through the chamber like a stone dropped into still water. The Vrathi froze mid-hiss. The Xanthari dimmed their inner light. Even the Glora, amphibious beings floating in gel-filled pods, stirred in surprise. No species in the recorded history of the Concordance had ever refused a tribute demand outright. Not once. To say no was not just defiance. It was heresy. Cale Vorn's eyes narrowed. His tail, coiled beneath his seat, gave a single, sharp flick. You misunderstand your position, Captain Hayes. This is not a request. I understand perfectly, Daniel replied, his voice steady. We are not asking for membership. We are not begging for protection. We built our ships. We defended our colonies. We earned our place, and we will not pay for the privilege of existing. Maya glanced at Leo. He gave a tiny nod. They both knew what came next. Sanctions, blockades, maybe even war. But something in Daniel's tone told them this was necessary. Humanity had spent centuries being told what it could not do, could not reach the stars, could not survive nuclear winter, could not unite after the resource wars. Now, standing in the heart of the galaxy's oldest institution, they were saying for the first time what they would not accept. The High Arbiter studied Daniel for a long moment. Then, without another word, he raised a clawed hand. The chamber lights dimmed slightly, a signal that the session was adjourned. As the humans turned to leave, whispers followed them. Not of mockery, but of something new, curiosity. A few delegates even bowed their heads slightly as they passed. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable, but it meant everything. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Daniel took a deep breath. He knew the real test was just beginning. The Council would not let this insult go unanswered. But for now, humanity had spoken, and the galaxy had heard. Back on the Odyssey, as the ship prepared for the jump back to Sol space, Maya asked the question on everyone's mind. What happens now? Daniel looked out the viewport at the swirling nebula beyond Xylos Prime. Now, he said, we show them what no really means. The word traveled faster than any ship, faster than light, faster than fear. No. It left the chamber above Xylos Prime as a whisper, then became a signal, then a storm. Within hours, it reached every human colony, every listening post, every trading outpost from Mars to the edge of the Kuiper Belt. People stopped what they were doing. Miners paused their drills. Students looked up from their screens. Pilots hovering near orbital docks replayed the transmission again and again. Captain Daniel Hayes had said it calmly, without shouting, without drama. But the weight of it pressed down on everyone like gravity. On Earth, in the capital city of New Geneva, President Elena Ruiz watched the recording in her private office. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many crises. She had expected negotiations, delays, maybe even a quiet surrender. Not this, not a single word that could start a war. Her advisors crowded the room, voices overlapping. Some called for an immediate apology. Others warned that the Council would cut off hyperspace access within days. A few younger staff members, however, stood silent, their faces lit with something close to pride. Elena did not speak for a long time. Then she turned to her chief of staff and said, "Get me Hayes on the line, and prepare the emergency council. We have decisions to make." Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey, Daniel, Maya, and Leo were already deep in discussion. The ship hummed softly as it coasted through the void, its engines in standby mode. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor of the briefing room, her tablet covered in notes. She had spent the last 6 hours analyzing every known dialect and tone used by the Council species. They didn't expect it, she said. Not just the refusal, the simplicity of it. In Vrathi culture, silence is respect. In Xanthari tradition, long speeches show wisdom. But one word? That's either madness or supreme confidence. They can't decide which. Leo paced slowly, arms folded. It doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what they'll do. Their fleet near the Orion Spur has already doubled in size. I've seen the intel. They're testing our borders. Daniel leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. Let them test. We didn't say no to be brave. We said it because it was true. We're not their servants. We never were. Back on Earth, the public reaction was mixed at first. News channels argued. Social feeds exploded with opinions. But by the second day, something shifted. In schools, children wrote essays about what no meant. In factories, workers wore pins with the word stamped in bold letters. In Luna City, a street artist painted a giant no across the side of an old fuel depot, and instead of tearing it down, the city council lit it with solar lamps. It became a landmark. The council's official response came on the 5th day. A formal ultimatum, broadcast on all official channels. Earth had 7 standard days to accept the original terms or face immediate sanctions. Total blockade of all hyperspace lanes leading to Sol space, freezing of all interstellar trade accounts, and revocation of emergency aid protocols. In plain terms, humanity would be locked out of the galaxy, alone, cut off from medicine, fuel, and allies. Panic flickered at first, but then something unexpected happened. People began to prepare not with fear but with purpose. Engineers worked double shifts to retrofit old freighters with short-range jump drives. Farmers on Titan increased crop yields, stockpiling food. Scientists in Nairobi and Vancouver shared open-source designs for water recyclers and oxygen generators. For the first time in decades, Earth felt united, not by a government order but by a single word. Maya Brooks, now stationed at Earth Command, received a strange message on a secure channel. It was encoded in a pattern she recognized from her early studies of Gluran communication. She spent hours decoding it. When she finally did, her hands trembled. The message was short. "Your word echoes in our tanks. We hear you." It was signed with a symbol she couldn't identify, but the origin point was clear. Glura Prime, one of the founding members of the Concordance. If even one of them was listening, maybe others were too. Leo Grant, now coordinating with Earth's defense network, noticed odd activity on the outer sensors. Small ships, unmarked, unregistered, were gathering near the edge of human space. Not attacking, just watching. Some matched the profiles of known smugglers. Others looked like refugee vessels from systems long forgotten by the Council. None hailed Earth, none made demands. They just stayed there, like birds waiting for a storm to pass. Daniel Hayes, now promoted to Special Envoy by President Ruiz, gave a speech from the steps of the Unity Plaza in New Geneva. He didn't wear a uniform, just a simple dark coat and boots. He spoke without notes. They think we said no because we're reckless. But we said no because we remember. We remember when we poisoned our own oceans, when we fought over scraps while the ice melted, when we almost ended ourselves before we even reached the stars. We survived not by taking orders, but by choosing better. That's what no means. It means we choose. The speech was translated into over 200 languages and broadcast across every human world. But it didn't stop there. Somehow it leaked into the wider galaxy. On the mining moon of Draxus 7, a group of Tarn laborers stopped their drills for 1 full hour. They stood in silence, then returned to work, but slower, more deliberately. On the pleasure rings of the Helix Syndicate, where entertainment drones played endless loops of music and ads, someone hacked the system and replaced it with Daniel's voice saying no over and over, calm and steady, for 6 hours straight. The Council tried to silence it. They banned the word from official channels. They flagged any transmission containing it. But it was too late. No had become more than a refusal. It had become a symbol, a seed. In the quiet hours before dawn on Earth, Elena Ruiz stood alone on her balcony looking up at the stars. She thought about her grandchildren, born after the last Great War, who had never known hunger or exile. She wondered what kind of galaxy they would inherit. Would it be one of tribute and silence, or one where even the smallest voice could say no and be heard? She didn't have an answer. But for the first time in years she felt hope, and far away in the dark between stars, ships that had never spoken to humanity before began to move, not toward Seoul, but toward each other. Forming lines, sharing signals, waiting. The word had been spoken. Now the galaxy would decide what it meant. 7 days passed like seconds. The Council's deadline loomed, cold and sharp as a blade. On Earth, the skies were quiet. No alien ships hovered over the cities. No broadcasts blared warnings. But everyone felt it. The tension in the air, the way people spoke in lower voices, the extra glance at the stars before going to bed. Humanity was holding its breath. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the observation deck of Earth Command high above the Pacific Ocean. Below him, the planet turned slowly, blue and green and alive. He wore no uniform today, just a plain shirt and trousers. His face was calm, but his mind raced. He had spent the last week meeting with scientists, engineers, pilots, anyone who could help prepare for what came next. Not war, he hoped, but readiness. That was the only language the Council truly understood. Maya Brooks worked from a small room deep inside the command center. Her walls were covered in maps of alien languages, sound waves, and cultural notes. She had barely slept. Every hour, new messages arrived, some from human outposts, others from unknown sources. One came from a Vrathi trader who had once visited Mars. It read, "My brood hears your word. We do not obey without question." Another, from a Xanthari research station near the Andromeda Fringe, contained only a single harmonic tone, their version of a nod. Leo Grant moved like a shadow through the defense networks. He had restructured Earth's entire fleet strategy in 5 days. Instead of clustering ships near Earth, he spread them out, hidden in asteroid belts, tucked behind moons, drifting in dead zones where sensors rarely looked. He also activated Project Beacon, a secret program that linked every human ship, station, and even civilian drone into one neural mesh. If one saw danger, all would know instantly. It wasn't perfect, but it was fast. Faster than the Council expected. Then, on the 6th day, the first sign came. A Vrathi dreadnought crossed the Sol boundary without warning. It didn't fire. It didn't hail. It simply appeared near the orbit of Neptune, its hull dark and jagged like broken bone. Sensors lit up across the system. Alarms stayed silent. Leo had ordered them muted. Panic served no one. Daniel was called immediately. He watched the feed from the observation deck. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Odyssey. Its weapons ports glowed faintly, charged but not aimed. It was a message, not an attack. A show of force. "They're testing us," Leo said, appearing beside him. "Seeing if we flinch?" "We won't," Daniel replied. He didn't order a response. No ships moved. No signals were sent. Earth stayed still. Silent. Waiting. For 12 hours, the dreadnought hung in space. Then, without explanation, it turned and vanished into hyperspace. No warning, no farewell, just gone. But the message was clear. The Council was serious. On the 7th day, President Elena Ruiz addressed the entire human population. She stood in the Unity Plaza, same place where Daniel had spoken weeks before. The sky was clear. Millions watched live from Earth and beyond. "We have not asked for war," she said, "but we will not beg for peace. If they come, we will stand, not with hatred but with honor, not to conquer but to protect what we've built together." Her words were simple, honest. They spread like wind through dry grass. That same night, something strange happened near Proxima Centauri. A small Glurin vessel, no bigger than a shuttle, appeared on long-range sensors. It sent no ID code. Instead, it broadcast a data burst directly to Earth Command. Leo opened it himself. Inside was a star map, marked with fleet positions, patrol routes, and weak points in Vrati's shield harmonics. At the end of the file was a single line. "We remember when we said yes too many times." Leo showed it to Daniel. Neither spoke for a long time. "They're helping us," Maya said when she saw it. Not all of them, but some. More signals came after that. A Xanthari defector sent schematics for their resonance dampeners. A smuggler from the Helix Belt offered fuel and spare parts. Even a few human colonies that had once declared independence quietly reconnected their defense grids to Earth's network. The word no had done more than refuse tribute. It had drawn lines, not just between species but within them. By the morning of the 8th day, the day after the deadline, the Council had not yet acted. No blockades, no attacks, but their silence was louder than any threat. Then, without warning, High Arbiter Kelvorn sent a private message. Not to the President, not to Earth Command. To Daniel Hayes directly. The message was short. "Your defiance is noted. But words do not feed worlds. Come to Xylos Prime, alone, we will speak." Daniel read it 3 times. Maya urged caution. Leo said it was a trap, but Daniel knew better. This wasn't about traps. It was about respect. The Arbiter had seen something in that one word, something he couldn't ignore. "I'll go," Daniel said. "No," Leo argued. "They'll take you hostage. Or worse." "They won't," Daniel replied. "Because if they do, the word won't die with me. It's already out there. In every ship, every colony, every heart that's tired of kneeling. He boarded the Odyssey that evening. No escort, no weapons charged, just him, the ship, and the stars ahead. As he left orbit, Earth's people watched, not with fear but with quiet pride. They knew the real battle wasn't in space. It was in the choice to stand tall when the universe said to bow. And far away in the dark, other eyes watched too. Not just council ships, others, smaller, quieter, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Daniel flew alone, but he was not alone. The galaxy held its breath again. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the Concordance, even Cale Vorn wondered if he had made a mistake. The council fleet gathered at the edge of Proxima Centauri like a storm cloud. Hundreds of ships, Vrathi dreadnoughts with jagged hulls, Zenthari crystalline cruisers that shimmered like frozen light, Gloran carriers drifting in thick fluid-filled shells, formed a wall of metal and power. Their weapons were charged. Their comms were silent. They had come to enforce the ultimatum. To show the galaxy that defiance had consequences, Earth's defense line waited just inside the system. It was smaller, far smaller, a few dozen human warships, retrofitted freighters with hidden turrets and a handful of scout drones. But they did not retreat. They held position, engines humming. Shields up, ready? Captain Daniel Hayes was not with them. He was still aboard the Odyssey, drifting near the neutral zone, waiting for his meeting with High Arbiter Cale Vorn. But his presence was felt everywhere. On every bridge, in every cockpit, his words echoed, "We will not trade our freedom for false peace." Leo Grant stood on the command deck of the Vanguard, Earth's flagship. His eyes scanned the sensor feeds. The enemy numbers were overwhelming. Yet something felt off. The fleet wasn't advancing. They hovered as if waiting for a signal, or a reason. Then, without warning, new blips appeared on the long-range scanner. Not from Earth, not from the Council, from the dark between stars. First a single ship, old, battered, flying no flag. Then another. And another. Within minutes, over 50 vessels joined the human line. Some were smuggler skiffs with patched hulls. Others were refugee transports, their paint faded, their engines sputtering. A few bore markings from systems long forgotten by the Concordance. None hailed Earth, none spoke. They just took position, beside humanity. Maya Brooks, monitoring comms from Earth Command, recognized some of the signals. "That's the Tarn Collective," she whispered. "They've been enslaved for 2 centuries. Another signal matched a rebel group from the Helix Syndicate. Another came from a Zenthari splinter faction that had vanished decades ago. They had all heard the word. And now they had come. The Council fleet stirred. Confusion rippled through their formation. This was not in the plan. They expected fear, surrender, not solidarity. Then, a transmission burst from Earth, not on military channels but on open frequency, unencrypted, sent to every ship in range. It was not a threat, not a plea. It was a data packet. Inside were schematics, clean fusion reactors that could power a city for a century without waste, atmospheric purifiers that turned toxic air into breathable oxygen, medical nanites that healed wounds and fought disease at the cellular level, technologies humanity had developed not for war, but to survive their own mistakes, the climate collapse, the resource wars, the near extinction of the 21st century. Attached was a simple message. We offer partnership, not tribute. On the bridge of the lead Vrathi dreadnought, Commander Jarvek stared at the data. He had expected weapons specs, battle plans. Instead, he saw blueprints for hope. His own world suffered from poisoned seas and dying crops. His people worked 12-hour shifts just to breathe filtered air. And here was a species that had faced the same ruin and built a way out. He looked at his second in command. "Do we attack?" The younger officer hesitated. The Arbiter's orders were clear. But the humans did not raise their weapons, Jar said. They offered a gift. Far above, aboard his personal vessel, High Arbiter Cale Vorn received the same transmission. He studied it in silence. His species valued logic above all. And logically, this made no sense. Why give away your greatest secrets when you're about to be crushed? Unless you believed in something stronger than fear. He remembered Daniel Hayes' word. No, not angry, not proud, just true. Down in the human line, Leo gave a quiet order. "Stand down weapons. Keep shields active, but do not fire unless fired upon." The human ships obeyed, their turrets lowered, Their targeting systems went dark. They waited, minutes passed, then an hour. The Council fleet did not move. Tension hung thick in the void. Then slowly, the lead Zenthari cruiser powered down its main cannon, a signal of de-escalation. One by one, other ships followed. The Vrathi dreadnoughts dimmed their weapon glows. The Gluran carriers retracted their boarding claws. No one spoke. No orders were given. But the message was clear. The battle would not happen. Aboard the Odyssey, Daniel received a new message from Kale Vorn. Return to Xylos Prime. Bring your scientists. We will talk, Daniel exhaled. He had not won. But he had opened a door. Back on Earth, people watched the feeds with tears in their eyes. They had prepared for war, but peace had arrived in a different form, not through surrender but through generosity. In the days that followed, the Council fleet withdrew. Not in shame but in thought. Ships that had come to enforce tribute now carried data drives filled with human knowledge. Some captains even sent thank you signals, simple pulses of light translated by Maya as gestures of respect. The Tarn ships stayed near Proxima for a while. Their leader, a woman named Rel, spoke to Leo over a secure channel. For 200 years we said yes because we had no voice. You gave us one. Then they vanished into the dark, carrying fusion schematics to their enslaved worlds. Humanity did not celebrate with parades. There was no victory speech. Instead, engineers began sharing more designs. Doctors sent medical protocols to every known system. Farmers uploaded crop rotation methods that worked in poor soil. It was not charity. It was invitation, and across the galaxy others began to respond. A Vrathi scientist requested collaboration on clean water systems. A Zenthari philosopher asked for human poetry. A Gluran historian wanted to record Earth's oral stories. The word no had stopped a war. But the gift that followed started something new. Daniel returned to Earth not as a warrior, but as a bridge. He walked through Unity Plaza again, this time with Maya and Leo at his side. People smiled but did not cheer. They understood. The real work was just beginning. High above, in the silent dark, stars burned as they always had. But now between them something else moved. Signals of trust, offers of help, questions instead of commands. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply reminded it how to share. 5 years passed like seasons on Earth, quiet, steady, full of change. The galaxy did not transform overnight, but it changed all the same. The word no had been the spark, but what followed was something warmer, slower, and far more lasting. Trust. Captain Daniel Hayes no longer wore a uniform. He walked the halls of the new Interstellar Accord Center in New Geneva with soft shoes and a calm step. His title was now ambassador, though he rarely used it. People just called him Daniel. He spent his days not in war rooms but in meeting chambers, listening more than speaking. He had learned that real strength was not in refusing but in offering. Maya Brooks had become the head of the Galactic Language Archive. Her team worked with over 30 species to build a living library of words, songs, and stories. She had discovered that the Zenthari didn't just speak in tones, they sang their history. The Glora told tales through shifts and fluid pressure, and the Vrathi, once thought cold and rigid, had lullabies older than cities. Maya made sure every child on Earth could hear them. In schools, students learned not just math and science, but how to say peace in 17 different tongues. Leo Grant still worked with defense, but his focus had shifted. He helped design joint patrol routes with former council members. Human and Vrathi ships now monitored asteroid fields together. Zenthari and Earth engineers built shared early warning stations near unstable wormholes. There were no secrets anymore, just shared responsibility. Leo often said, "A shield is stronger when two hands hold it." The Concordance itself had changed. It was no longer called the Galactic Concordance Council. Now it was simply the Accord. Membership was no longer about tribute or power, but about contribution. Any species could join if they offered something of value, not resources but knowledge, art, or care. Earth had been granted full voting rights after just 3 years, far sooner than expected. When the vote passed, Kale Vorn himself sent a message. You did not ask to be included. You showed why you should be. High Arbiter Vorn had stepped down the year before. In his place stood a council of equals, 3 humans, 2 Vrathi, a Zenthari philosopher, a Gluran elder, and representatives from 5 newer species who had once been voiceless. They met not in the cold chamber above Xylos Prime, but in a rotating hall that moved between worlds, so no one species held home advantage. On Earth, life went on. Children played in parks under clean skies. Trains ran on solar rails. Cities grew upward, not outward, leaving forests and rivers untouched. People still remembered the time before, the wars, the heat, the fear, but they spoke of it like a story their grandparents told, not a wound that still bled. Every year, on the anniversary of the Proxima stand, Earth held a quiet moment at noon. No speeches, no flags, just silence for 60 seconds. And in that silence, people remembered the choice that changed everything, not to fight but to say no to fear. Daniel often visited the old Unity Plaza. A simple stone now stood where he had given his speech. Carved into it was one word, no. But around it, people had added their own marks, handprints, small stones, flowers that bloomed in Earth's new climate. It was not a monument to defiance, but to dignity. One evening, as the sun set over the Pacific, Daniel sat on a bench near the plaza. A young boy, no older than 8, approached shyly. He held a datapad with a school assignment. "Did you really say just one word?" the boy asked. Daniel smiled. "I did. And that's all it took?" "No," Daniel said gently. "The word was easy. What came after was hard. We had to prove we meant it. Not with weapons, but with actions. With sharing. With listening." The boy nodded slowly. "My teacher says the Zenthari sent us a song last week. About rivers, what they did," Daniel said. "And we sent them a poem about stars. That's how it works now." The boy left thoughtful. Daniel watched him go, then looked up at the sky. The first stars were appearing. Far away, on a newly terraformed moon in the Orion Arm, a human engineer and a Vrathi botanist worked side by side, planting trees that could grow in both Earth and Vrathi soil. On a research station near Andromeda, Zenthari and human children played a game that mixed light patterns and hand signs. In the Helix Belt, former labor colonies had become schools, teaching history not as a list of rulers but as a chain of choices. The Accord still faced challenges. Old habits died slowly. Some species still hoarded knowledge, some leaders still whispered about control. But every time doubt rose, someone would ask, "What is your word?" And more often than not, the answer was not yes or no, but "let's talk." Back on Earth, President Elena Ruiz had retired. She lived in a small house near the coast, growing vegetables and writing letters to young diplomats. She often said the greatest victory was not winning a battle, but making it unnecessary. Maya once asked Daniel if he ever regretted saying no. He thought for a long time before answering. "I don't regret the word. I regret that it had to be said at all. But since it was, I'm glad we meant it." Now, as night fell over New Geneva, the city lights glowed soft and steady. Ships came and went from orbit, not warships, but transports carrying seeds, books, and students. The galaxy was still vast, still mysterious, but it no longer felt cold. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had simply learned to walk among them without shame, without fear, and without tribute. And in every corner of known space, when a new species reached out, trembling, unsure if they belonged, the reply was never a demand, it was always an invitation.